Hi there, my name is Michael Harris. I'm host of Falling Up Radio. I'm not going to get into all the normal stuff that we talk about because I want to give as much time to our guest today as possible. We talk a lot about falling up and about healing, overcoming stuff with yoga, back pain, all sorts of different things. But today, I invited a friend of mine on, and I really wanted to just really talk about having a good life and having fun. And, all those other things aren't really any good unless we're having fun. So our guest, you may or may not recognize him already. Thomas Bahler is a creative. And I'm going to read off a short list of some of the things that you may recognize him for. He worked with Michael Jackson. He wrote the song She's Out of My Life. Over 20 million YouTube videos, plus millions more that other artists have played as well. Tommy's worked with Frank Sinatra, Billy Joel, Karen Carpenter, Cher, Kenny Rogers, Elvis, Barbra Streisand, Smokey Robinson, David Cassidy, Harry Belafonte, Patti LaBelle, Willie Nelson, Cyndi Lauper, and the list goes on. And one person that we cannot forget, one of Tommy's most favorite brothers and friends, not literally brother, but brother, is Quincy Jones. And I also wanted to mention, I went on to allmusic.com and looked at Tommy's credits. They have 367 credits listed. This guy's really a legend. Producer, composer, director, vocal arrangements, trumpet, and so on. Like I said, he wrote She's Out of My Life, as well as a number of other songs, was involved with We Are the World, and hopefully we can take a little time to talk about that. So Tommy, welcome. Glad you could be here today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man, so I really appreciate you taking the time today to have a discussion with the listeners and telling them what it's like to have a kick-ass life.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. First, I'd like to read a little bit out of your second book, What You Want, Wants You. This is a fascinating book because I really like the way that you talk about creativeness, connecting with the universe, and really doing what we love to do. And you're such an example of that. So I'm going to read, like I said, it's 7 or 8 sentences, something like that. So why did I receive this idea? It came to me because it picked me. Why? Because I had the passion to make this idea reality. That's why. I believe it had been waiting for me. Declaring what I wanted opened the gate. Permission was granted for this idea to move into my consciousness, and at first, I did not understand it. Get permission from someone in power. Okay, this may be my favorite part. I'm excited to introduce you to one of the most fascinating phrases that I ever heard from my dad, one that immediately caused a bright light to shine in my mind. When this idea first comes to you, you may not understand it, because if you did, it wouldn't be new. You remember writing that, Tommy?
I remember hearing it.
Yeah.
From my dad.
Yeah. Well, tell him the story that came from, because it's a fascinating story as a child about what happened.
Well, I don't remember this part of the book. I mean, I remember the story, but there were so many moments I had like this with my dad, because my dad was a great father, but he was also a mentor, and that isn't necessarily a father's job, but my dad felt it was his, and his mother mentored him. So it's just this philosophy that's just sort of been passed down from generations, and that's why the book is called What You Want, Wants You.
Yeah.
That energy is attacked.
Yeah. Well, I love this part of the book because when you were a child and it was talking about getting your Cushman.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I love that story. A Cushman was a motor scooter that was very cool back in the 40s. They started building them in the 30s, and they built them through the 50s. And I had a paper route. I had 2 paper routes, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and I enjoyed them. And I rode my bike, and one of my buddies who lived on the next block, had 2 paper routes too, and they were much bigger than mine. And he got a Cushman, and all of a sudden he was home like an hour and a half before, because I would miss dinner most of the nights. You know, my mom would leave dinner on the stove, and it wasn't like a hardship. It was just, you know, it was just what it was. But he was 15 and a half, and he had a learner's permit. I was 13. And so I talked to my dad about getting a Cushman, and he explained to me that, you know, you're not old enough to get a learner's permit, but you need to ride this. And the problem is that if you were to get pulled over by the police and ticketed, it would make you getting your learner's permit up to 6 months to a year later. Mm-hmm. That was the way he warned me about it. He did not say no. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, that sucks. I think I'll ride my bike. But I wouldn't give up. So I thought, this is where it came to me, get permission, because I said, what do I want? I want a Cushman. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. Well, what came to me, this is this formula that our family has that's so beautiful. You declare what you want, and then you're a good host to the ideas that come in. Because when you declare what you want, our way of looking at it is you open the doors to the universe. And if you are worthy of this, and I'm not talking about being a good person, if it's going to be good for the universe for you to get this, the thing that you want, it'll do it for you. It'll conspire to help you. Now, it's all up to us. We can't sit there and wait for it. Say, okay, I said I want it. Where's my Cushman? Yeah. But so I wanted a Cushman, and what came to me was, because when my dad talked about getting a ticket and all that stuff, it just so happened that my best friend, Tucky, his father was the city manager. He's kind of, he's not really a politician, but he's very connected with the city. So I went down and knocked on his door. He was so sweet. He came to the door. He says, hey, Tommy, I'll get Tucky for you. And I said, actually, Mr. Coop, I'd like to speak with you. And I told him my story of why I wanted a Cushman, because I could serve my customers better, because it would be easy for me to go porch a paper, and all of these things, and I could build my routes and everything. And anyway, he said, well, and I said, I'm aware of the law and everything, but I've just mentioned it to you. And he said, okay, I can't remember the sergeant's name, but anyway, he says, here's Sergeant so-and-so's number. He's a desk sergeant at the police department. Call him, tell him I told you to call. I called him and told him this is what I wanted to do. And he said, well, Tommy, if you're delivering papers on your Cushman and you're obeying the law, I can't think of any of our officers that would pull you over. Mm. And I said, oh my gosh, would you tell this to my dad? And he said, I'd be happy to. So I'm like, Dad, I'm going to follow the police department. Would you please talk to the sergeant? Talk to the sergeant. And he goes, yeah. Oh, that makes sense. Well, that's a good idea. He gets off the phone and he says, I have no idea how you did that, but you can get a Cushman. Wow.
And I imagine you were pretty jazzed at the time.
Oh, I was thrilled.
Yeah.
I was thrilled. And the thing is, then I got to know the officers in our area, and I didn't have to ride. I didn't have to be delivering papers. Mm-hmm. They knew I was a good citizen. They're like, he's fine, he's fine. Now, that was a different time. This was a different time than it is now. And so, yeah, that's just a great example of this philosophy that I learned as a child that, as far as we know, started with my grandmother. There are 4 points to it. You declare what you want. You're a good host to the ideas that come in. And your next statement is, I'm taking action. And when Dad first told me about this, I said, I'm going to take action. He said, son, listen to my words. I'm gonna is the future. I'm taking is the present.
I love it. Yeah.
And then the fourth, I said, okay, and you said there's 4 steps. He said, yeah, the 4th step is trust like a tea kettle. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, if you put a tea kettle on the stove, what happens? I said, well, the water boils. He said, not yet. You need a fire. And your fire is declaring what you want, being a good host, and declaring that you're taking action. That's your fire. Yeah. Now, once you got the fire under the tea kettle, are you going to stand there and wait for it to boil? Probably not. But your awareness is heightened because you're going to wait for that.
For that sound.
And I said, does this work, Dad? And he said, it has never not worked for me as long as what I want serves others.
Yeah. Wow, powerful. Now you had already learned that even younger than that too.
Well, I learned it actually at 5. I mean, but I didn't understand. That's really when he went into the whole formula of it. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I was 5 years old. I had a flat on my back on my bike.
Yeah.
And it's early on Saturday morning. I probably woke my dad up, and he was such a cool guy because he liked to sleep in. But if he could see that either one of his boys was troubled, sleep was secondary. So anyway, I woke him up and I said, Dad. And he said, what is it? And I said, my bike has a flat. And he says, what do you want? And I thought I annoyed him.
Mm-hmm.
And by this time he's out of bed. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. And he gets down on his haunches, so he's looking at me straight in the eye. And he says, son, listen to my words. What do you want? I said, I want my bike not to have a flat. And he said, great. What are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know. And he said, if you did know, which was Dad's code for use your talent. We all have a talent of perception.
Yeah.
We have eyes, we have ears.
Yeah.
Use those. So I looked at by this time we're out in the yard. I looked at the tire, it's fallen off the rim. And I said, I guess that tire needs to come off the rim. And he said, great. How are you going to do that? I'm like, oh man. So now again, I look at the wheel, which is held on to the fork by 2 nuts. And I said, I guess those nuts need to come off. And he says, great, I'll get you a wrench. So Dad was present. He didn't blow me off. He was totally there. My dad, in 45 years I had him on this planet, never answered a question, but he guided me to discovery. You see what happened? He said, how are you going to do that? So now I discover myself that I need to take the tire off. Then I discovered that I need to take the nuts off. He didn't tell me, well, you need to take those off. And I would be thinking, wait a minute, what order does this go in? You know, I mean, it's the whole thing because it's receptive listening to advice.
Yeah.
Discovering is, this is mine.
Yeah.
This is mine, man. So he brings a wrench and he goes, you're 5, I'll loosen it. So he loosens the nuts and then he stands back, crosses his arms and looks at me with a smile. And I start taking this thing apart. And when I took the nuts off, I said, oh, Dad, there are all these things, these washers. How am I going to keep track of this? And he said, well, son, you're 2. He said, may I make a suggestion? That was always, I was raised on questions and suggestions. May I make a suggestion? I said, yes. He said, you're 2 feet from a wall. If I were doing this, I'd take the nuts off and put them next to the wall. Then I'd take the lock washers off and put them next to the nuts, but toward me. Then the flat washers next to the lock washers toward me. And all the parts that I take off, I would just keep putting them toward me. And then after we fix the tire, start with the parts closest to you, work your way back to the wall. Now, as a 5-year-old, I understand this. I don't have to remember anything. What did he say? How do you do that? No, it was clear. When I took them off, it was clear how to do it the other way. It was just amazing, man. And what I loved is that this is the way I was raised by this man. And he would never answer a question. And yet he guided me to discovery. And that's how I fell in love with Aesop, because we owned a record store at the time. And Warner Brothers had come, I was 3 years old, so it's 1946. Well, Warner Brothers came out because there were 78 records. They play them on both sides, and they're about 8 inches They had an 8-inch and I think a 12-inch. Anyway, they had four records in there, and they would tell a classic story with the Looney Tunes characters, which were Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig. And they would tell these classic stories. And since we sold them, when they came in, my dad asked the guy who ran the store to drop one off to me. And when I saw this, I loved the pictures on it and everything. And I started playing it. I fell in love with this story. When Dad came home, I remember running to him and holding his leg, saying, "Dad, thank you. I love this story. It's so wonderful." And he said, "What? So glad you like it, son. You know, that's not a new story." And I said, "It's not?" Because I just got it, right? Mm-hmm. He said, "No, that story is 2,500 years old." Well, the story was Bugs Bunny and the Tortoise, which is Looney Tunes version of the Hare and the Tortoise. Where did the Hare and the Tortoise come from? It came from Aesop, who was a Greek slave born in 620 BC and ended up as an ambassador to the most powerful king in the world. His rise was amazing. And what was his secret? Well, I was to find out that secret. And that was one of the secrets that has guided my life, let alone my career. He guided it. So anyway, he told me the story and I said, "Dad, I love this story." Oh, and he said, "Oh, by the way, yeah, it's not a new story." And I said, "Is 2,500 years old? Bugs Bunny isn't 2,500 years old." You know, I know that. Yes, you're right. But the story is. And he said, "As a matter of fact, in the original story, the tortoise wins." Mm. I'm like, "No way."
Yeah, and how can that be? Yeah.
Right. He said, "You know what? I'm going to bring home a book of Aesop's fables because this is typical of him." So he brings home these stories, and for 2 years, he's reading me these stories, and I love every one of them, and he must have told me each one. There's 347 of them. But anyway, he told me.
There's no way there's 347 stories?
Yeah, fables, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, the thing is that Aesop did not write them all. Because I've studied him so much, I can tell the ones that he wrote. But what he did is he started a trend. This is what parables, this is before Christ, by the way, you know. Mm-hmm. Parables were stories in which, and so are fables and parables are different in certain ways, but they share this commonality. They guide us toward discovering the meaning. The listener discovers the meaning of the story. So when I'm 5 years old, Dad has told me this several times. I said, "Dad, what does that mean?" And he said, "Well, son, if I were to say to you, you shouldn't lie because people won't believe you when you tell the truth, I can only imagine what would be going on in your mind. You would be thinking, I bet you might be thinking, oh my God, did I ever lie to Dad? Why does Dad think I'm a liar?" And you're going to go completely off course because you've been attacked. When I say you shouldn't, that's an attack. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't lie. That was an attack on you. He said, "But if I tell you a story about a little shepherd boy whose job it was to watch the sheep at night. He was all alone with the sheep, and he's looking down on the village, and everybody's partying and having a great time, and he's up there, and it's not that warm, and he's all alone, and he's lonely. And he thinks, oh my God, I hate this. What do I do about it? What can I do about it? Well, oh, you know what? You know what it would get him out here? If I cried wolf." So he cries wolf, and sure enough, the whole village comes up to check out their sheep. And now this kid feels, he feels validated. He feels loved, cared for. And while they're there, they're making sure everything, we're so glad you're okay. By the way, where's the wolf? He said, well, when he saw you coming, he ran off. And they went, of course he did. So they believe him. Mm-hmm. Well, that was fine. But he kept doing it and kept doing it. You know how kids are. Do it again, do it again. Pretty soon they were like, oh, this is a ruse. So when the wolf did come, the people did not. And he said to me, "Son, what do you get from this story?" And I said, "If you lie, people won't believe you when you tell the truth. He said, yes, but who discovered that? And I thought, I did.
Yeah.
I did. And that's when Dad said, I have yet to forget anything I have discovered. I have forgotten at least half of what I've learned.
Wow.
And he and I talked about this subject throughout his life, because the older we got, the more sophisticated thinkers, we would talk about it. He says, well, you think about it, son, it's a different energy. It's feminine. I mean, this isn't about sex, but the feminine receives. That's how she gives birth, right?
Yep.
The male is the doer. So if you receive advice, you're receiving. When you're the doer and you discover something, that's yours. That is.
You never forget it. Absolutely.
And by the way, this has nothing to do with men and women. I'm just talking about the feminine energy versus, and so that was the point. And I fell in love with Aesop when I was 3 years old. And as time went on, I just had a deeper and deeper understanding. And then he moved in with me. And when I got to the point of being a composer, I love musicals. I wanted to write a musical. And I was in a very good position to do that. And the guys and the fellow who wanted me to, he suggested I write a musical. He said, do you have any ideas? And I said, well, I think Aesop is a great subject. He said, oh my God, I think this is fabulous. To show his rise, because he was born as a slave without access. Now, slaves in ancient times were not beat up and didn't walk around in chains. This is all, unfortunately, somebody's wild idea. They were owned and they were respected, but they didn't get paid and they couldn't leave, so you are a servant, and you're not being paid, but you're being fed, you have a place to live, and it depended on what kind of slave you were. If you're a field slave, you're treated differently. If you're a house slave, you're one of the family, And this is the way that Aesop grew up, because his mother, now, by the way, the whole story I'm telling you doesn't exist. This is the story that came to me. Talk about being a good host. Anytime Aesop knocked on my door, I would bring it on, and I wrote it down. And so this is probably the greatest case of me declaring what I want and listening, being a good host, and taking action on that, and trusting.
Mm-hmm.
And I trust in my life. And what I found is that I have to tell the truth about myself to myself. If I bullshit myself, I'm already started off on the right path.
Yeah.
On the wrong path.
Right.
And it is yet to work out.
Yeah.
But when I admit this is what it is and then say what I want, somehow things work out.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how that happens?
Well, it's energy. I think it's just a flow of energy. It's not personal. We all have our own beliefs, and I honor anybody's belief. If you were to ask me to agree with you, I'd say, well, I may not be in agreement with you in specifics. I am in concept,
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been a huge winner for me. And also sometimes things came to me before I declared. For instance, when I first, I grew up in music, but I fell in love with an album called Genius Plus Soul Equals Jazz. I think it came out in 1959, and it was Ray Charles, and Quincy Jones was the arranger. Mm-hmm. And I was in love with Ray Charles because of What I Say.
Mm-hmm.
And I even went to see him live at the Palladium when I was a kid. And this album blew me away. I played it every single day. And then I got into Quincy Jones and I bought an album he did called This Is How I Feel About Jazz. And I love this album. And then, and also I fell in love with Julie London because her voice was so sultry and sexy. And then I saw the album cover and oh my God, it was like looking at a Playboy. I mean, I was so in love with her. Well, when I went to college, I decided to be very, very, and my dad would go along with these things because he knew I was okay. I wanted to be independent. I took an 18-foot house trailer that we used for fishing, and I rented a spot close to my college, and I lived in a trailer park, and I lived in this thing, and I brought my record player, but I only had 2 records. I forgot to bring my records, and the 2 records I had was Julie Is Her Name and Birth of a Band, which was another favorite of Quincy. So I played these 2 albums every night as I was going to sleep, depending upon my mood, because Quincy had a wider range because some of the things were killing it and some of the things were sexy and all these things. And then Julie's was just all sexy. And I would play these, and as I was going to sleep, Michael, I started to I saw myself, and this is not me thinking about it, okay? I'm just going to sleep, but I'm in that alpha state and I'm listening to their music. I saw myself working with Julie London. I saw her with me and me with her. And then I also saw me working with Quincy Jones. Now I'm 18 years old at the time, and they were pleasant thoughts, so why not entertain them?
Sure.
Well, 6 years later, Julie London called, and I worked with her. 11 years later, Quincy Jones called, and I've been working with him ever since, 45 years.
Wow.
So again, these are things that are internal in us, and to me, I just turned 75, and at my 71st birthday, I spent it with my son and his wife and her parents. And we're all sitting around the breakfast table, and my son says to me, "Dad, you just turned 75. What are your words of wisdom today?" And it came to me immediately. I said, "Happiness is a choice."
Yeah.
So this was my choice. And this is also what I learned, because I asked my dad, when ideas come to you, how do you know if they're good or not? He said, "Well, your heart will tell you that."
Yeah.
Does it feel good? It is good. If it doesn't feel good, just let it go. You don't have to, if you don't pay attention to it, it'll leave.
Yeah.
It's like women. I'm serious, man. You know, the one thing I have learned, I've studied a lot about the feminine relationship thing, not just because of myself, because I'm an author and I write about this. My second novel, I'm writing as a woman, and I wanted to, you know, have some teeth, you know. And what I learned in my studies is that a woman will put up with a lot from a husband as long as he's present. In fact, even these relationships where women are physically abused, when he's physically abusing you, he's present. I'm not saying any of this is good, and I'm not recommending it, but I'm afraid it's the truth. But I don't care how wealthy you are, how nice you are, how thoughtful you are. Well, if you're thoughtful, you are present. But if you can give a woman everything that she desires, and if you're not present, she's going to be hanging out with a gardener. She's going to be hanging out with somebody else who is present.
Yeah.
So this, to me, that's just an example. But to me, that's the way, if we don't give things attention, they go away.
Yeah.
So when these thoughts of being with Julie and being with Quincy came, I just let them hang out. So they were hanging out. We were hanging out together in my spirit when I was 18 years old. And when we hung out together 6 and 11 years later, we all felt like we knew each other.
Yeah. And you did, because like on the etherical world or sense, however you want to describe it, that's there.
Exactly. It's alive.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, this may or may not be a very good segue. Tell us about She's Out of My Life.
Sure, happy to.
How did that come about? And because I know that it was originally for Frank Sinatra, as I understand it.
Well, that was the artist, but I didn't write it for anybody.
Right.
No, well, let me give you a quick history of why I'm a songwriter.
Okay.
In fact, why I got into music. See, I know so many people in music industry that are so in love with music, that's their life. Music is not my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge part of it. But my life is about people. I love people. And again, this came from something Dad said. He said, son, we are all here to serve others, all of us. And I believe that we serve others the best from our passion. Because I have yet to meet someone who has a passion who isn't good at it. Look at your passion for yoga. Look at what you've done, how it shaped your life, how you've shaped other people's life, how it's grown into whole other areas. And it all started with that. Well, mine started with music because I enjoyed it. My dad beguiled us with his playing, and that's why we liked it. And I also saw when he would take a breath, because he's a great trumpet player, also a cellist. But when he closed his eyes when he played, and then he'd open them, and I would see rapture in them, and I want some of that.
Yeah.
So when I was 5, I said, Dad, I want to play trumpet. And he said, great. He said, I hope you understand that with every opportunity comes an equal responsibility. I said, okay, what does that mean? He said, well, if you're going to play, I would expect you to practice every day, 5 days a week, just like you go to school. This is how you learn math. This is how you learn English. This is how you learn trumpet. And I said, well, how long will I do that? And he said, I think 10 minutes is enough to start. I'm like, well, damn, I got that, you know? And so, and because he was a great mentor and he always got me the best teachers, and we enjoyed playing. Playing wasn't a chore for us. We loved it. My brother and I both. And so when I get to be the age where I'm interested in girls, I'm in 7th grade, and I want to hold this girl named Martha Mutz, who is my girlfriend. So to speak, girlfriend means we smiled at each other. Yeah. Maybe we shook hands once. Yeah, I wanted to hold her. The only way I could hold her was on the dance floor in a slow song. And we had our very first school dance in 7th grade. And instead of being held in the gym at school or something, this was held at a community center, you know, with a real band and all this stuff. And the band that they chose was playing music my dad wouldn't dance to. Hmm. And so my friends go, Baylor, go tell them what we want. So I go up there and tell the guys, ask them, would you play so-and-so? Would you play so-and-so? And this guy says, we don't play that shit. So I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Again, when I pull on this formula, okay, what do you want? I want to hold Martha Mutz. What are you going to do about it? And I thought, well, this band's not going to play it, but I can. So I just went up. I was 13, so I didn't, you know, verbally, I was fine with my own, but the guy who managed the place had to be 25 or something.
An old guy, yeah.
An old guy. I thought I'd better stand next to him before he died. So I didn't know what to do, but I thought, you know what, here's what I can do. And this is what this formula helps me with. I'm going to go up and talk to him. No, you don't have the balls to do that. You're right, I don't. But I have the gumption to stand next to him. Mm. So I just stood next to him. And pretty soon he looked over at me and he says, are you having a good time? And I said, sir, I'm glad you asked me that question. No, I'm not having a good time, and neither are my friends. And he said, and why is that? I said, do you see anybody on the dance floor? No, but they will. I don't think they will. Why? This music is not our music. And instead of bringing him a problem, I said, however, if on your next open date, I will provide you with a band that will play our music. It'll be the same size as this, and we'll do it the first gig pro bono. So he goes, let's go in the office. He looked up the date and he says, can you make this Friday night? And I said, you got it. I walked out of there and I thought, well, I don't have a band. I better put one together. And these are all reasonable things to do. But I knew people. So I called my buddies. And I had, first of all, I made a set list of all the songs that I knew my buddy, because we all loved them, right? We're the same age. I call my buddies and I say, can you play? Of course we can play these songs. Okay, well, here's your set list. They came over to my house and picked it up. Friday night, everybody was on the dance floor. They couldn't get him out of the place. And the guy comes up to me and says, you got a gig every Friday night. Well, wow. The next Wednesday, I get a call from Crozier Junior High saying, hey, we hear you have a great band. Can you play for us on Friday night? And I said, no, but I'll get you one. So pretty soon I had 2 bands. In 6 months, I had 4 bands. Now, people think that I'm the music maven. But if you think about it, what was my story about? Connecting.
Connecting, yeah.
Getting what we wanted. All I wanted to do was to hold my girl. But I had a talent and connections, and I used that to get what I wanted.
And I guess the question is, did you get to hold Martha Mutt's hand?
Oh, baby. No, I didn't remember that. We were making out by the end of the night.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. She was cute, too.
Yeah.
So to me, music is you know, my way of serving others from my passion. Yes, I'm passionate about music. But when I'm sitting at home, you hear any music playing? No. I don't turn on music when I'm home. I don't pick up my horn and play it. If I have a reason to sit at the piano, I will. But because I've grown up with it so much, it's kind of like a dentist going on his day off to watch oral surgery, you know?
Yeah. Why would they do that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's going on in my head. It's in me constantly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I don't play music at home, because it's going on in my head.
Yeah.
So I hope that's helpful to your listeners.
Absolutely. Tell us more too. We were talking the other day too, and a little bit about We Are the World and how that came about, and as you were recording the takes, and Cyndi Lauper only having 1 take, but tell us before that, tell us a little bit about how We Are the World came about, and Hare Belafonte, and how all that stuff happened.
Well, it actually started back with a concert that George Harrison did in Bangladesh. That's the first time they brought a group of, you know, varied musicians together. And
I remember that song, or that concert.
Yeah, the concerts come and go. Yeah. And so Bob Geldof, there was a big famine in Ethiopia, and Bob Geldof is, like Hare Belafonte, is a very socially conscious guy. And he and a couple of guys wrote a song called Do They Know It's Christmas? And they pulled in, I can't remember how many artists did it. It was done in England. And it sold 8 million records like crazy fast. But where he realized he made the mistake was, no matter how good that song was, nobody was going to play Do They Know It's Christmas in March. Mm-hmm. So Geldof goes, uh-oh, we made a big mistake. So he flies over the United States, and he goes to a fellow activist who is Hare Belafonte, and he says, hey, Hare, would you help me? I want to redo this in the big pond. We have more things to do, and we can do a lot more here. And Hare said, well, I think you ought to do a concert. And he said, yeah, that'd be great, man. So he connected him with, Hare Belafonte connected him with Ken Cragen, who was one of the master well, he's a master human being. I love this man. I've known him since I did the Smother show. He's managed virtually everybody, and he's a real humanitarian. And Ken said, "Hey man, concerts are great, but they come and go. They're gone. What we need to do is make a recording. We need to write a new song that isn't about Christmas, that deals with the same thing." And Harry says, "Great." Bob says, "Great." He calls Lionel Richie, who is one of his clients, and Lionel writes the song. And then he calls Quincy, because Ken always deals with the best. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there wasn't a better producer in the world than Quincy. He called Quincy and he sent him the song, and he said, "Oh man, yeah, absolutely, I'll do this." But he said, "I'm listening to the song and I love Lionel, and everybody's friends." He said, "But I think Michael should kiss this." Mm-hmm. And Ken and Lionel said, "Yeah, go." So anyway, Lionel and Michael ended up writing it. And then we started looking at the kind of singers that we wanted in this. And we knew that we could get anybody we wanted because of Michael and Lionel.
So did you know kind of from the beginning that you wanted to bring this large group of performers?
Well, yeah, because they'd already done it. They'd already done it in England.
Yeah.
We just took their concept and filled it out, and had, because we are 320 million and they're 60 million, between England, there was just more opportunity there. So yeah, that was the whole deal. But nobody had ever brought that many. We had like 40 artists or something. And we treated it like a war in terms of our planning. What can go wrong and what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. And we sat down with Lionel and Quincy and Ken Cragen and I, and basically mapped out the night. And that's why Quincy put up a sign that said, "Please check your ego at the door," because this was going to be a room full of egos. And the last thing you want to do is get a bunch of hit artists in the studio at the same time, because they all feel, and rightly so, that their idea is the best.
Yeah.
So how do you make them part of a group? Yeah. And how do you make them compliant and yet not distinguish, what do you call when you put a fire out? Not
distinguish.
Huh?
Extinguish?
Extinguish, yeah. Not extinguish their passion.
Yeah. Well, now, not to take you off track, it's my understanding too that Diana Ross asked Daryl Hall for an autograph on the music.
Right, I was just going to get to that.
Okay.
So we have it very well planned out. So there's no time for umaras, what Quincy calls umaras, right? So one thing stopped another thing. So got them all in the studio and we're playing. Michael laid a guide track on the song so we could listen, we could learn as a reference. So we're listening to it over and over and over. And that's the way that we learn the best, is when we just listen and let it come in on us. And while they're rewinding the tape, Diana, and we knew that there would be some people that other folks called divas. I don't really believe in that. But, and how would we deal with them? With grace. If it occurred. Well, it never did occur. But what happened is, while they were rewinding the tape, Diana, like a little schoolgirl, holds her music in her hands and goes up to Daryl Hall and says, "Daryl, I'm your biggest fan. Would you please sign my music?" And he says, "Of course I will." Then there are 40 of us looking around and we go, "Oh my God, this is the only time we will ever be in the same room." And for the next hour and a half, we all signed each other's music.
How wonderful. Yeah.
And you know what that did? At the end of that hour and a half, we were a family.
Yeah.
We were all in this together. We all had each other's signatures. We were completely invested in this. Yeah. And so we recorded the chorus first, and that went on for a few hours, and it was all enjoyable and it was all wonderful, and And then we excused everybody else and we stayed with the soloist, and we had him in a U shape. And that was basically my department. Quincy said, look, my feeling is Lionel's the first one to write this, so he should sing the first line. Hmm. Michael came along and wrote the other part with him. He should sing the first chorus. And because Michael and Diana are so closely related, Michael used to live with Diana when he first moved to LA back when he was a kid. She was almost like an auntie to him. Then have Diana join him on the second part of the chorus, and the rest is yours. Yeah. So it was like arranging in heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you had mostly all singers, but like Dan Aykroyd was on there too, which is
but Dan sings. He didn't sing a solo. He was in the chorus.
He was in the chorus. Yeah.
I could put you in the chorus. It'd be fine. The thing about choruses is that you don't want a bunch of good singers in choruses. What happens in a chorus is that you become a molecule, in a larger group. Yeah. And it's wonderful, and it's joyous, and yeah, it was no problem. But we wouldn't give Dan a solo.
Yeah. Yeah. So what came out of We Are the World? Is it still playing out there? Did it serve what you wanted to?
Well, because of Ken Cragen running this thing, and also my favorite attorney, Jay Cooper, who handled all the legal side. Ken is great with people. So as we recorded this, nobody paid for anything. Nobody was paid for anything. They gave us a studio. Everybody worked pro bono. Michael and Lionel have never taken a cent from this song. Wow. It's all going to USA for Africa, which was the organization that was built. And along the line, and the night that we shot it, it was all covered by video. I can't tell you how many video people we had there. Everybody worked pro bono because Ken's thing was, look, we're all working for free. Don't you dare make a nickel, man. Because we're all doing this for the same reason. So no one argued with that. The record was good and well received, and we made $63 million.
Wow.
One record.
Wow.
Now, Ken turned that into $120 million worth of product. Medicine, food, clothes. Again, because he goes to all the vendors and invites them to be part of this. But of course, no one's going to make any money. You may cover costs.
Yeah.
So that turned it into $120 million. And the beautiful thing about it for me is that at this time, people have been, it was United Way, Red Cross, all of these things. They raise money so often at this time in these, because these nations in Africa were pretty much regimes. And way too often, the goods would be loaded off the ship onto the dock. And as that ship pulled out, another ship pulled in, and they were loaded back on the ship because the guys who ran the country had sold it. Mm. So how were we going to avoid that? And Ken felt the best thing is to have cameras rolling everywhere, and the notoriety, the fact that we covered the earth with there was no one on earth, except for maybe if you were in the jungle someplace with no communication, would you not know somebody in this band, somebody in this group. So we had such notoriety that when and they were being taped as they delivered the goods, everything that we did got to where it was going. So to me, talk about serving others.
Yeah. So kind of like the local politicians couldn't do anything about it.
Exactly.
And they could probably say, look how good that we are because this happened.
Well, of course, it became a feather in their cap too.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it still generating revenues, or is it?
I talked to Ken a couple of weeks ago, and the company's still going. they still pull in about $250,000 a year.
Wow, that's a lot.
And all of that still goes out. I mean, it's not, there's not, you know, there is no bottom line.
Yeah.
Comes in and goes out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something to be, especially because that was 1985. What's that? 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And if it's, you know, it made 120 million the first year, but you figured even on a sliding scale, it's been an incredible journey and something that every one of us that we're involved with are proud of.
Yeah.
To be a part. And this goes back to serving others. We're all here to serve others.
Yeah. How wonderful.
And I found, you know, we're all human beings. I've done things where I was serving myself and they never worked out.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm serving others and not thinking about myself, I get showered with stuff, man.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how that works?
It is. It's energy. And the thing is that we, in my opinion, we tend to live in a mindful world instead of a spiritual world. And I'm not talking about spiritual, like, you know, saying things, whatever people do. But
Yeah.
just, we know what it's like to be in our spirit world.
Yeah.
And it doesn't rule us because it's feminine.
Yeah.
Feminine rule, their power is not in masculine power, like you will do this, you will do. No. They get us, actually, they guide us to discovery. Yay, women.
Yeah.
Yay, the feminine.
Yeah.
Give birth.
Yeah.
I have 7 grandchildren now.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
And are they in your area or do you have to travel to see them?
I have to travel. My children have trifurcated this nation. I have a daughter. I'm going to start on the West Coast. I have a daughter in Spokane. I have a daughter in Fort Worth area. And I have a son in Alexandria, Virginia. It's just like a big V.
Yep.
And for the last year, I have hung out with all of them a great deal. And I've just settled back in LA. I'm in Playa Vista now because I've got a number of projects that I'm doing here. And one of them I'm very excited about too, because it's for a company an organization called Teen Cancer America. And it was started by Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend of The Who. I love The Who because they're just irreverent enough, you know?
Yeah.
And yet not negative at all. They're just, you know, it's like, who are you? You know, and guess what the name of their overall, what do you call it? I'm sorry?
Charity?
Yeah, but charity is one word, but it's, anyway, yes, charity. The name of their overall charity is called Who Cares? Wow. Is that perfect for them?
I love it. Yeah.
That's the way they are. So anyway, they started this thing in England 25 years ago because teens were not being served because it's rare for teens to get cancer. The older people they're all set up for, and unfortunately pediatrics is the second, but they're armed for that. They know what to do. What would happen with a teenager, not only are you leaving your family and cleaving to your tribe, so you're making a transition, your body's making a transition, your hormones are going nuts, and all of a sudden you get an expiration date. And then you go in for treatment, and your roommate's a 6-year-old,
yeah,
an 80-year-old. And we all know that with disease, that our mental attitude has a lot to do with how we fare with it.
Huge.
And I love Pete and Roger. Roger is a generous spirit. And when he heard about this, a friend of his told, because it wasn't personal to them. I thought maybe it was somebody in their family, but it wasn't. But a dear friend of both his and Pete's was telling them about how troublesome it was. And Pete and Roger said, you know what? I'm going to use my notoriety to change this. 25 years ago, now they are doing 7 concerts a year at the Royal Albert Hall. There is virtually no hospital, according to them, and I'm the reporter here, so if somebody says he doesn't know what he's talking about, you're right. But I'm, I'm going to share it with you.
Yeah.
What I heard is that virtually every hospital has a ward that's not being used, or even a wing, you know? There's always a room somewhere. And they started out by making these places that's an atmosphere for teens, so they can talk to each other, so they can come together and hang out with each other and trade their war stories and feel each other. And there, I see some video that's just so heartening, like these two young girls that are on IVs, and you know, the IVs are on a stand, and they're racing down the halls on the stands. You know, they're having fun. Instead of going off, my life is over, you know?
Yeah.
So I've gotten involved with them because they're now doing it in America. And this reminds me of We Are the World. Maybe this is why this is turning to this. Because again, England's a great country. It's 60 million people. We have 320. We already have 15 hospitals. They're looking for 300 and maybe more. And the thing with these concerts that we're going to do, yes, hopefully they make money, but they're more there to build awareness. That's worth more than the dollars, because then the donors come in. We have one of our biggest donors, husband and wife, lost their daughter at 22, and they're wonderful philanthropists. So they joined. They said, "Oh my gosh, yes, this is something that our hearts have." So this is what we're doing, and I was asked to write an anthem for them. And it's been a thrill to write it because, again, I know I'm serving others.
Yeah.
My passion and the talents that were God-given to me.
Yeah. So it's something that Pete and Roger with The Who, they're going to play this anthem? And
no, they won't play it.
They won't play it?
No, they are behind this. They are invisible to this.
Okay.
Most people don't know that they're involved. And when I talked with Roger, you know, I said, well, you know, we've got all these great plans. You might be really, you know, I said, you'll probably love him when you see him. He said, I probably won't see him, man. I stay away. I get great people.
Yeah.
I have them do it. The point is, I wanted to make this happen, and it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be involved. And this isn't part of his career. I don't think he's ever sung a song about that. I don't know that he has or not. But the point is that because that these concerts at the Albert Hall, because Roger is who he is, you know, Paul McCartney will come by and play it. So will Elton John, and they'll, you know, and we can do that in America too. And what we're actually doing is we're going to do a full orchestra, a full chorus, and then stars.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it's so much fun. I'm having the time of my life, and again, why? Because I'm serving others. Yeah.
Wonderful. You know, I don't talk about this a whole lot, and you may or may not even know, but you know, when I was 12 years old, I had a water skiing accident, and I had 60% of my liver removed and 21 blood transfusions, my gallbladder, cracked ribs, collapsed lung, coma, had a near-death experience, died and came back, and all of that stuff, and did wheelchair races in the hospital. I mean, I did all that stuff. And I just have this real deep compassion for children and kids that are dealing with their own, whether it's cancer or whether it's anything else that they struggle with, you know, medically. Is just like, you know, I have a real deep heart for that because I've been there, done that.
You did it. How long ago did that happen?
I was 12.
Oh my.
It was 1971. I had just won the junior championship at Portland Golf Club.
Wow.
And I was water skiing, and I was a little hotshot water skier at 12 years old, and was doing a beach landing, and it hit the beach a little too hard, and head over heels. Yeah. It took me about a year to recover.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So you firsthand, you know what this is like.
Firsthand, yeah. And, you know, I gave blood for a number of years. I should start doing it again. My big focus right now, and everything that I do with my work and my business, there's an organization out there, you may or may not have heard of it, called Operation Underground Railroad. And they're their main mission is ending the sex slavery in the world.
Oh, amen.
And so I have a portion of my revenue every month that goes to them. And it's just, you know, when I heard about it, and it was a special ops guy that left DHS and all that because he was going into these hellholes around the world and seeing all these things happening out there. And he said, we got to stop it.
Wow.
You know, there's 40 million slaves in the world today that they're saying, you know, and there's more slaves, they say, in the United States right now than during the Civil War.
Oh my God.
And even where I live,
all sex slaves?
Sex slaves. And that the corridor through here, Highway 97, is supposed to be a huge corridor as well for a lot of that activity.
Oh man.
And it's disgusting, really.
It is disgusting. It's the worst part of humanity.
Yeah, yeah. And I do believe, and I really, I mean, We Are the World and Teen Cancer America and all these things, it's so important that we find something to help with.
Yeah. And you know, I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And I went through his Mastery University.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like paying for college. It was not cheap, but you know what? What a bargain it was. And you know, he said, and I've done probably a dozen UPWs, you know, Unleash the Power Within, his weekend thing, you know.
Yep.
He really spoke to my soul, and obviously a lot of others. But I loved what he said when we were going through this university. There is in 3 different 6-day immersions over 2 years. And he said, you know what, if you walk away with one thing,
yeah.
And what I walked away with was what he calls 6 human needs.
Yeah.
And they came to him in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
This is when my things come to me is driving down the freeway, doing this, right? You know what I mean? And I think it is all of us, because there's a part of our consciousness that is busy, and it gives kind of it's like mom isn't home, the kids get out to play, you know?
Yeah.
And his 6 needs are certainty. We all need to know that the sun is coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Second is uncertainty. Because as much as we need certainty, certainty is boring.
Yeah.
Uncertainty is the spice of life.
Yeah. It's the flow.
Yes. And then the third is significance. We all want to feel significant. And if we don't, we feel terrible. And that's what I can imagine these sex slaves feel like that, you know, regardless of gender.
Yeah.
You know, you lose your significance. And I loved his example. He said, you know, significance. How do you gain significance? He said, well, it can be gained a lot of ways. And I break that down into what is obtainable and what is sustainable. He said, if you're walking down the street and some guy comes up to you with a 45 and points it at your stomach, he is significant.
Mm-hmm.
But is that sustainable?
Mm.
No. So that's a different kind of significance, but it's significant. Number 4 is love and connection. And we all need that. And this is what he talked about 6 human needs. He said, these aren't things that we want, that we strive for. These are things we cannot live without. And one way or the other, we're going to accomplish them. And whether your life is happy or not may have a lot to do with the manner in which you go about feeding these needs. So you have certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection. 5 is, I think 5 is contribution, which is giving without want or expectation of recompense.
Yeah.
And I'll think of the 6th one in a minute.
Well, I'll tell you something about Tony as well. And what we were talking about is Operation Underground Railroad. Tony's been a huge contributor to that, and I know that last year he personally contributed over $1 million to the organization.
There you go.
And the guy that started it, Tim Barrett, the special ops guy, Tony went undercover on an op in Haiti to buy some of these kids as young as 3 years old.
Wow.
And he was out there in Haiti with Tim doing this special op, and what they were trying to do, first they were trying to get the kids out of there, but then they were, they wanted to also arrest the perpetrators. And Tony said it was one of the hardest things that he's ever done, is to sit there in an undercover type operation, and not wanting to jump out and wring these guys' necks. And women too, because there was a number of women that were heavily involved in the trafficking. And
this is
all that he could do not to, jump out of his skin.
It's about power, overpowering the underpowered.
Absolutely.
And it is disgusting. It's disgusting to anyone who doesn't rationalize their way out of it.
Yeah.
So, and those people all end up dying young.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about maybe the victims too, but I think the perpetrators do too. It's like dealing drugs, man. It's like robbing banks.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those nonsense.
But you got a guy like Warren Buffett who has good taste and has made millionaires out of how many people is 89 years old and killing it, Yeah,
still killing it. It's because he's serving. Yeah.
And I love what they said. They said, why don't you wear a better suit? He said, actually, my suits are very well made and they're very expensive, but on me, they look cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he still drives an Oldsmobile, actually.
Oh, yeah. And he lives in the same house. He's lived for, whatever. And that tells me that the order of his life is life-giving.
Yeah.
This isn't about him, unlike some politicians.
Yeah. So we don't have too much time left today, Tommy, but I was just thinking back when we met, the publishing event, and was in Vegas. You were standing out in the hallway, and I was thinking, I got to go introduce myself to that guy. I had no idea who you were. I mean, I knew Tommy Baylor. I knew some of the music and songs and that kind of stuff, but I didn't really know you. And I went up and I said, hi, Tommy, because you had your name tag on, and we started talking. And it turned out that we had some mutual friends, and we really hit it off. And now I think that was 2012, so 6-7 years ago. Here we are having a conversation.
I remember you coming up. Yeah. Because you came up like you knew me.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe I do know him. I just don't know him. But by the time we walked the other way, we did know each other. And it was beautiful, man.
Yeah.
And those are energies coming together. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. 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 And it's just like you're
you can't prove an energy.
Yeah. Right there. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I get to see you a couple times a year, and it's just every time you're around, it's just like it's a real pleasure to, hang out, have dinner, lunch, whatever it is that we're doing. And
well, thank you, man. And the same thing with you. I've always enjoyed seeing you. You're a bright light.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, if I didn't need to go on to the next thing, I wouldn't be wrapping this up, Tommy. We could go on all day. I know you're such a magnificent storyteller, and you've got so many great stories. I mean, we didn't talk about Radio City Music Hall, Siegfried and Roy, you doing yoga. I mean, there's so many different things that we could talk about. So, but maybe another time.
Absolutely, sounds good to me.
Yeah. So
I believe in what you're doing, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you. So, regardless of whether you're listening to the audio podcast or you're watching the video, I would really invite you to check out these books that Tommy has written. again, first of all, anything is possible. You told the story about that earlier, and what you want wants you. I've been diving back into this again. I've read it before, and I'm diving back in. It's just like, oh my God, that sentence wasn't there before, Tommy. You magically added it back in.
You know, that pleases me more than anything else with people that have read What You Want Wants You. It becomes kind of one of those books that you can just open any page and you might get a little gem out of it.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine who was the president of USC, the best president we ever had, Stephen Sample, wrote another book that I recommend, and it's called The Contrarians Guide to Leadership. And I have that book by my bed, and every now and then I just open it up to a page, and it's exactly what I need to hear that day.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, because again, Anything Is Possible is not a linear book. It's just about different subjects and things of that nature. Well, and I want to say about Anything Is Possible is that I have a new agent. He said, that's the worst title ever put on a book. Doesn't tell you anything. And I happen to agree with him. But anyway, Anything Is Possible is the life story of Aesop that came to me.
Yeah.
So it's his life story.
It's just that flow. So, well, your gift, Tommy. And again, I look forward to seeing you soon. And, you know, I hope a visit is in order.
Well, it is, because I have a new grandson up in Spokane, and you know I like to drive. I'd rather drive up there from LA than fly.
I hear you.
And I love to do it because I always get to stop by and see Gail, and then I get to see you.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the plan.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I'm done.
You know, Les Brown is in town February 25th, and Les Brown, myself, and Ken Streeter, which is what's called motivation.com. So we're going to be speaking on stage in the Tower on Monday the 25th. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, that's wonderful. Where's the Tower?
It's downtown, here, downtown Bend.
Oh, in Bend. I love Bend. That's right. You live in Bend, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because Redmond's a different. I mean, Redmond's a great town, but it's not Bend.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
it's not. No, totally different.
Yeah. Well, that's great, man. Well, I'll let you know. I'm going to be in the studio because we're actually making a reference recording of this anthem that I've written.
Wonderful.
So it may be March, but I'll let you know when I'm coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hold on till we get to the other side. Again, Anything Is Possible. What You Want wants you. And get the book. See whether it does something for you.
And I'm on Facebook under Thomas Bahler, Bahler.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, man.